Brought to you by Charity Mobile. Switch to the phone company that supports your beliefs. All plans start under $50 before taxes and surcharges. Use promo code TRADITION at CharityMobile.com for a special offer.
We are witness today, in our time, to an apostasy growing across all groups that call themselves Christian. People are leaving the faith, the broader Christian faith, but really the true faith, the Catholic faith. And we're now getting data about this. A study was published, went quietly under the radar, gathering data about belief. If you're looking at young people and going to mass in larger numbers now, seemingly, and being more open to God and the rest as a good sign, it is a good sign, but the numbers might be a little misleading. Go here to Info Vaticana. Headline: Religious decline in the United States, Christians in decline and young people without faith. Young people without faith. It does look like more people are going to Mass and becoming Catholic than ever before in most of our living memories. But is the trend reversing? I'm not convinced that it is. And the data doesn't make it look like that it is either. Now, this data will, of course, not include the aftermath of Charlie Kirk, which, whatever else you may have thought about him, undeniably has led to many people saying that they're going back to church. We've all seen it at this point. We've all seen in the last month and a half, since that happened, people going to church again, whether it's at a Catholic parish, seeking out traditional Catholicism, or maybe their families were Protestant and they decided to go back to their family's Protestant faith, any of which is objectively better than being an atheist. We've seen that. So that won't be included in this data set here. But there is the talk of a great Christian awakening happening in America, and it's premature to call it that. But there are signs that it's happening. That doesn't mean that it is. It could just be a sort of a thing of the moment. I say that because we're going to go over the data. And I don't only have for you here the Info Vaticana article. For those who want to read further, I actually have a link to the study. So you can go over the data in more depth if you want to. From the article, quote, a new report from the Public Religion Research Institute titled 2024 PRRI Census of American Religion confirms a trend that has been building for years. Christian identity in the United States continues to decline, while the number of people without religious affiliation is steadily increasing. According to the study, based on a national survey of more than 40,000 adults, 65% of Americans now identify as Christian. While this remains a clear majority, it represents a decline compared to previous years, especially among young people. In contrast, those who declare themselves no religion or unaffiliated now reach 28%, the highest level recorded to date. And you get a graph here. White evangelical Protestant, mainline non-evangelical Protestant, white Catholic, Latter-day Saint, Orthodox Christian, Black Protestant, Hispanic Protestant, etc., all the way down the line. And then it includes, groups that call themselves Catholic but really are Christians but aren't, and then just full-on pagan groups at the bottom. But you have that here. Purple is religiously unaffiliated, the largest group of all groups. That's where we are. The report highlights that white Christians, a category that, according to the study, includes non-Hispanic Catholics, Protestants, and evangelicals, have decreased from 40% in 2013 to 40% in 2024. This reduction marks a historic shift in the religious composition of the country, where ethnic and cultural diversity is also reflected in the practice of faith. Among Christians of color, African Americans, Hispanics, and Asians, the proportion remains more stable, hovering around 25%. Overall, the data indicate that Christianity remains the majority reference, but is losing cohesion and social influence in the face of the spread of secularism. The so-called nones, people who do not belong to any religious community, now make up nearly 30% of the population. In just a decade, this group has gone from being a cultural minority to becoming one of the most influential social forces in the country. Among young people aged 18 to 29, the phenomenon is even more striking. Only 54% identify as Christian, while 38% say they have no religion. This generation, known for its distrust of traditional institutions, seems to be distancing itself not only from churches, but also from any organized form of spirituality. The study emphasizes, however, that these young people are not necessarily atheists. Many describe themselves as spiritual but not religious, reflecting an inner search disconnected from church structures. Study also shows a strong correlation between religious affiliation and political orientation. Among Republican voters, 84% identify as Christian. Among Democrats, only 58%, and 34% say they are unaffiliated. In other words, religion remains a political and cultural marker in American public life. This division poses an obvious pastoral challenge. Christianity, especially in its most visible form, runs the risk of being perceived not as a universal faith, but as a partisan banner, end quote. And if that comes to pass, that will be a complete disaster. The faith is not supposed to be partisan. It's just that there are some very obvious partisan implications for the religion you have. But here's the study if you want to see it for yourself. I'll again have this linked to the show notes at the Anthony Stine Substack. And, this is where they got the graph from. Some more trend lines. The decline of white Christians and rise of religiously unaffiliated over nearly 2 decades. Here's your religiously unaffiliated. Goes back to 2006 when they were 16% and now is at 28%. It is almost doubled in 20 years. While everything else is a clear downward trend. And a lot of this goes back to the events of September of 2001, when Christianity and all religion in general, some pretty obvious reasons, stopped being looked upon favorably because the 4 horsemen of the atheist apocalypse, as they called themselves, were very, very effective at convincing people that the problem was religion itself and not just one in particular. That is where we are. And we have this happening at a time when the Synod on Synodality and its leading voices, including the Pope, are out there saying that no one and no institution and no religion possesses the truth. That is a statement of apostasy. Catholic Church's central claim, going back to antiquity, going back to the apostles, has always been that the Catholic Church is the church founded by Jesus Christ on the rock of Peter. That he promised the church the Holy Spirit would guide her in all truth. Outside of that church, there is no salvation, something the church has always taught. It's debated what that exactly means, but it's something the church has always taught. And as I have said repeatedly, even the loosest, silliest, most inclusive version of that still makes the claim that the church was founded by Christ on the rock of Peter and that it possesses the truth. And now you have churchmen denying that in an open act of apostasy. This unwillingness to lead, combined with the scandals of the last 20 years, the flames of which were fanned by McCarrick and James Martin and all the rest, have led very clearly to people walking away. Sal Brown with a super chat for $20. Thank you. It is very appreciated. If we're all journeying together and looking for the truth, then we are reinventing the wheel and no sin is really known. Well, that's kind of the implication, isn't it? What is sin? If there's no truth, what is sin? If we don't possess the truth, how do we know what sin is? Other than eco-sins, these guys have been very, very clear that they believe in eco-sins. There have been some of their mouthpieces in the media have openly talked about writing eco-sins and how to go to confession to confess your eco-sins. I wish they were concerned about souls, that they had a quarter of the energy that they dedicate to those issues, that they could dedicate to the concern for souls. That would be a vast improvement over where we are now. I'm curious what you think about this. Let me know in the comments. Have you seen that data play out in your own life? I live in a pretty religious part of the country, so it seems like no, but even I've noticed that the Protestant parking lots are nearly as full as they used to be on Sundays. But I go to a traditional Latin Mass parish, where the parking lot is so packed, and increasingly so it seems, that at least some of the numbers that other Catholic parishes are losing are coming to my parish and parishes like it. So it's a little hard to discern from real lived experience what this looks like in everyday life. Let me know if you've seen this, though, play out. But again, let me know what you think of this in the comments, please. Hey, like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. sharing this on social media helps a lot too. And if you've ever thought about supporting the work we do here, Return to Tradition, options in the description box below, that subscribe plus button, which is the old YouTube join button, as well as Patreon and all those kinds of things. All of those asked for by viewers of the channel. Get access to a patron Discord server, as well as early access to videos and the like. It does greatly help support us. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.